Control is anxious because it needs everything to obey its plan. Stewardship is responsible because it accepts the work of ordering what has been entrusted to it. That difference matters because many of us have seen control dressed up as authority. We have seen domination dressed up as spiritual leadership. We have seen people use the Bible to make their insecurities sound like a mandate from heaven. But Genesis does not give you permission to crush image bearers. It gives you responsibility to govern ground. So I'm in my hotel room right now in Fort Lauderdale. I'm on a major tour playing piano for one of the biggest artists in the world, which is still crazy to say out loud. And in the middle of the flights, sound checks, rehearsals, and hotel key cards that apparently have a personal vendetta against me most times, I'm still here making these videos. Not because I needed one more thing to do. I'm here because my relationship with God is the reason I'm in these rooms in the first place. And sharing what I'm learning with you is part of the reason I stay grounded while I'm in them. Which is kind of funny because everything I need to talk to you about today starts with ground. You can be on a big stage and still have unmanaged ground. You can look like life is moving and still have stuff inside of you running the show. And when the ground inside of us is unmanaged, a lot of us start managing people. We call it leadership. We call it standards. We call it the way God set things up. Everybody knows somebody who can turn a room into a hostage situation and still call it keeping peace. Not with a weapon, with a tone. You ask a normal question and now somehow you're disrespectful. You set a boundary and now you're rebellious. You say you're tired and now you're not committed to the vision. And if people have to walk like the floor is made of Legos just to keep your world feeling ordered, that is not peace. That is everybody deciding it's safer not to be honest. So yes, we are going to talk about narcissistic patterns, not the big obvious movie villain versions, the little versions, the one that shows up in us when we need the room to obey so we do not have to deal with the ground inside of us. And I am not diagnosing anybody. I am naming a pattern because when my need to control the room matters more than the image of God in the person in front of me, I have crossed a line. We notice control when someone does it to us. When we do it, we call it wisdom. We call it protecting the house. We call it, I'm just trying to help. That is where Genesis 1:28 starts pressing on us. Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, subdue it. The last word has been used to bless domination. Control your spouse, control your children, control your team, control the people who make your world feel out of order. And then call it biblical. But Genesis did not subdue image bearers. It subdued the earth. People are not the ground under your feet. People are image bearers beside you. So what if the issue is not that you care too much about order? What if the issue is that you have been trying to subdue people because you have not learned how to steward the ground God actually made you responsible for? This is where Cain becomes uncomfortable because the first time someone refused to rule what was inside of him, he tries to remove the person who exposed it. And if we are honest, the pattern did not end with Cain. I want to show you why control can imitate peace, why narcissistic patterns can hide inside spiritual language, why kābash, to subdue, is not permission to dominate, and why the ground you refuse to govern will eventually start governing you. And by the end, I want to give you 3 questions that will help you see whether you are stewarding the ground or just controlling the room. So if you're ready to challenge the narrative and honor the text, stay with me. You see, the order matters. Genesis 1:28 does not throw random commands together. Para, to be fruitful. Let's say that's the apple. Be fruitful. Produce something real. Let what God placed in you become something that can nourish. Rabah, to multiply, is the seed. Let what you produce move beyond the first person it helped. Release it. Stop gripping it. Trust that life can grow after it leaves your hand. Melah, to fill, is the space. Do not just produce and release. Occupy the space your obedience created. bring your full presence into the room. Then kābash, to subdue. And that word asks a harder question. What happens when the ground resists you? What happens when the seed is real, the space is real, the calling is real, but the ground is unmanaged? Because here is the issue. You can produce fruit and still live in chaos. You can release seed and still have no structure. You can fill a room and still leave the ground under that room unhealthy. Fruitfulness without multiplication is production without legacy. Multiplication without filling is release without presence. Filling without subduing is presence without governance. And that is where a lot of us are. We are present but not governed. Gifted but not ordered. Productive but still ruled by the same ground we were supposed to bring under care. Good does not mean finished. Here is what we have to understand about Genesis 1. The earth was not evil. God keeps calling creation good. So when God tells humanity to subdue the earth, he is not saying crush this bad thing. He is saying take responsibility for this good thing that is not finished yet. Good does not mean finished. Good does not mean ordered. Good does not mean ready to sustain what God wants to grow. A field could be good and still needs tending. A garden can be good and still needs boundaries. A gift can be good and still needs discipline. A calling can be good and still needs structure. That is the part we miss. We think if something came from God, it should not require this much work. If the calling is real, the rhythm should come naturally. If the gift is real, the system should build itself. If the relationship matters, the habit should just form. But Genesis gives humanity work before the fall. Work was not originally punishment. Stewardship was not originally a consequence. Bringing order to creation was part of the assignment. So the presence of resistance does not always mean you are outside of the will of God. Sometimes resistance is where stewardship begins. Now, I know how to produce in unmanaged ground, and that may sound good, but this is the part that hit me personally. I know how to produce in chaos. I know how to make things work at the last minute. I know how to help other people build clear plans while my own systems are held together by memory, pressure, and just enough grace to make it look like I have a process. And because it still works, I call it capacity. But sometimes what we call capacity is just survival with better vocabulary. I can create while my schedule is unhealthy. I can serve while my body is tired. I can teach clarity while avoiding the parts of my own life that needs order. I can help somebody else build the ground for their assignment while mine stays overgrown. And for a while, that can look impressive. But eventually you have to ask, am I fruitful because my ground is healthy, or am I fruitful in spite of my ground? Those are not the same thing, because if the only way something works is through adrenaline, exhaustion, last minute pressure, emotional avoidance, or constant rescue, that is not stewardship. That is unmanaged ground producing just enough fruit to keep you from confronting the field. You remember Cain? Cain actually showed us this pattern. The first time we see someone fail to rule the right thing, it is Cain. The two brothers bring an offering. Abel's offering is received. Cain's is not received in the same way. Cain is angry. His face falls. But notice what God does. God does not wait for him to murder. God addresses what is happening underneath the surface. In Genesis 4, God tells Cain that sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for him, but he must rule over it. Do not miss this. God does not tell Cain to rule over Abel. God tells Cain to rule over what is trying to rule him. That is the pattern. When we refuse to govern the ground inside of us, we start attacking the people who expose it. Cain would not rule comparison, so he removed Abel. He would not address rejection, so he destroyed the person who made him feel rejected. He would not deal with what was crouching at the door, so he made his brother pay for what was happening in him. And if we are honest, we still do this. We do not subdue insecurity. We control the people who make us feel unseen. We do not subdue fear. We micromanage the people who make us feel unsafe. We do not subdue shame. We punish the people who remind us of what we have not healed. We do not subdue our need to be needed. We call it love while making people dependent on us. That is not subduing the earth. That is refusing to govern the ground and then calling the damage leadership. So I want to make sure I make this very clear. Control is a counterfeit for stewardship. We need to separate these two words. Control asks, how do I force the outcome I want? Stewardship asks, what has God actually made me responsible for? Control goes after people. Stewardship goes after conditions. Control demands compliance. Stewardship creates an environment where life can grow. Control is anxious because it needs everything to obey its plan. Stewardship is responsible because it accepts the work of ordering what has been entrusted to it. That difference matters because many of us have seen control dressed up as authority. We have seen domination dressed up as spiritual leadership. We have seen people use the Bible to make their insecurities sound like a mandate from heaven. But Genesis does not give you permission to crush image bearers. It gives you responsibility to govern ground. Your habits may be ground. Your house may be ground. Your schedule may be ground. Your appetite may be ground. Your anger may be ground. Your platform may be ground. Your money may be ground. Your private life may be ground. Your ability to tell the truth may be ground. And if you don't bring that ground under faithful care, something else will rule it. What you do not subdue will subdue you. This is what makes the command uncomfortable. The ground does not stay neutral. Unmanaged ground grows something. And if you do not subdue your schedule, hurry will disciple you. If you do not subdue your phone, the algorithm will disciple your attention. If you do not subdue your fear, avoidance will disciple your obedience. If you do not subdue your anger, your family will be discipled by your reactions. If you do not subdue your appetite, your body will carry the cost of what your soul refused to face. If you do not subdue your need to be seen, your calling will slowly turn into performance. This is not about hustle. Hustle says run faster so you can be worth more. Genesis says you already carry the image of God. Now take responsibility for what has been placed in your hands. That is different. One is insecurity, the other is assignment. Subdue the ground, not the image bearer. Let me make this plain. If you are a parent, your child is not the ground to be conquered. The atmosphere of your home may be ground. The impatience you keep excusing may be ground. The pattern you inherit and keep repeating may be ground. The way your phone steals your presence, it may be ground. If you are a leader, your team is not the ground to be conquered. The culture may be ground. The confusion may be ground. The lack of clarity may be ground. The meeting that wastes everybody's life may be ground. The conflict that nobody wants to name may be ground. If you are a creator, your audience is not the ground to be conquered. Your motive may be ground. Your consistency may be ground. Your relationship with attention may be ground. The pressure to turn every conviction into content may be ground. Subdue is not about forcing people to become easier to manage. It is about bringing the conditions around you under wise, faithful care so people can flourish instead of shrink. That is a completely different kind of strength. You cannot feel what you refuse to govern. Melah, to feel, asks us whether we are filling the space our obedience created. Kābash, to subdue, asks whether the space can actually sustain life. Because you can fill a room with a vision and still have no rhythm to carry it. You can fill a home with provision and still have no peace in the atmosphere. You can fill a business with opportunity and still have no structure strong enough to steward it. You can fill a platform with truth and still have no private life capable of holding the weight. You can fill a church with people and still leave the soil unhealthy. This is why increase can become dangerous when the ground is not governed. More people does not fix unhealthy soil. More attention does not fix a fractured private life. More opportunity does not fix a lack of order. More fruit does not fix the field. Sometimes the reason the next level feels heavy is not because God is withholding it. It is because the current ground cannot sustain it yet. That is not condemnation. That is clarity. So what do? Start with these 3 questions. Number 1, what ground has been ruling me? Do not start with who needs to change. Start with what has been ruling you. Is it fear, hurry, anger, appetite, avoidance, approval, comparison, the need to be seen, the need to be needed, the belief that everything falls apart if you are not in control? Name it, because what stays unnamed usually stays in charge. Number 2, who have I been trying to control because I will not address the ground? This one is uncomfortable, but it matters. Who keeps paying for what you refuse to bring under care? Your spouse, your children, your team, your friends, your audience, the people you lead, the people who love you. Sometimes the person you keep trying to control is not the problem. They are just the mirror showing you what has been ruling you. Number 3, what would faithful order look like this week? Not a life overhaul, one act of faithful order. A boundary, a budget, a bedtime, a walk, a hard conversation, a calendar block, a therapist, an apology, a system, a rule for your phone, a room you finally clean, a project you finally structure, a person you finally stop trying to control. Do not make this so big that you never obey it. Subdue one field. Bring one piece of ground under faithful care. The ground has to be named. You were not made to dominate people. You were made to steward the ground. Maybe the thing you have been calling busyness is avoidance. Maybe the thing you have been calling discernment is fear. Maybe the thing you have been calling leadership is control. Maybe the thing you've been calling capacity is chaos you've learned how to survive. Kābash, to subdue, does not ask you to become a tyrant. It asks you to stop being ruled by what God gave you responsibility to steward. Fruitful, multiply, fill, subdue. Be fruitful says make it real. Multiply says release the seed. Fill says occupy the space. Subdue says bring the ground under faithful care. So here is my question for you. What is one field in your life you keep surviving that God may be asking you to subdue?